the rim. Garnett on the slam. Oh, using Curry way downtown. Oh, what a shot!
Defending the hype. There isn't a more perfect way to describe the career of LeBron James, and it's also the perfect way to dive into his case for GOAT. It's been difficult to determine if he should get one of these videos, not because he doesn't deserve it, but because he could easily wind up playing another 6 years, meaning his case isn't even finished yet. But that just gives all the more reason to do it. The fact that he's still just 33 years old with a freshly signed 4-year contract, and he's already no worse than the second greatest player of all time, means there's simply no more reason to wait. Starting with his unbelievable high school career all the way to his present-day Hollywood status, this is LeBron James's case for the greatest of all time. But before that, here's my case for why you should download the game Guns of Boom. Let me go ahead and catch one of these guys that's not paying attention. Yep, look at him. He doesn't even know where I'm coming from. He didn't even know where I was coming from. It was too late. Took some damage. That means there's one more out there. Oh yeah, he walked right into it, armor and all. Let me give him the sidearm. Alright, now I gotta go ahead and reload. Oh, he got me while I was reloading. Grenade, and there goes the killing spree. I don't normally put time into mobile games, but I can promise you Guns of Boom won't be one of those games that I just advertise and never play again. Guns of Boom is an extremely fun, dynamic, and easy to play mobile shooting game. Right after you download it and complete the short tutorial, hop straight into online games with a few teammates and enjoy a deathmatch in what has to be one of the most entertaining and fluid mobile shooting games on the market. The games are always short, sweet, and action-packed, which keeps it from feeling stale, and it'll continue to entertain you because of its diversity. Some of the features that help with that include weapons customization and upgrading, a variety of maps, quests to complete, and all of this has led to 50 million people joining the game within a year. And the gameplay itself won't get old quickly either, because you can take whatever you earn to unlock new weapons with either gun bucks or completing quests they lay out for you. Install Guns of Boom now and get a huge starter pack of machine guns with a special skin, armor jacket, and the mask borrow for your initial game progress. Install the app by clicking the link in the comment section or in the description.
There was so much pressure to see what this kid and this team has.
How good is LeBron James?
Well, simply put, Dan, LeBron James is the best high school basketball player I have ever seen. And I think as a 17-year-old, he's better than Kobe Bryant was at the same age. Wow.
Now that is a bold statement. If you know anything about Kobe Bryant coming out of high school, then you know he was being touted as the best player anyone had ever seen at that age. And it was all well deserved, by the way. That obsessive nature we saw in the pros wasn't anything new for him. He's pretty much been that way damn near since the day he picked up a basketball. But imagine this. There was so much hype around LeBron James even as a junior in high school that people were lined up at his games waiting for an autograph as if he were a rock star at a concert.
He's like the next Michael Jordan, so my brother told me he had to get a picture.
An 11th grader in the year 2003, before social media was even a large concept, had already captivated an entire nation from the relatively unknown city of Akron. And make no mistake about it, what he was able to accomplish in high school was nothing short of spectacular, so this wasn't just hype being blown out of proportion. He and his friends who'd played together since elementary school were recruited to play high school basketball at St. Vincent St. Mary High School, and because his close friend Drew Joyce felt the coaches wouldn't discriminate because of his size there, the team stood behind him and followed suit. As a freshman, James was already having no problem leading them to a Division III title and a perfect 27-0 record, averaging 18 points a game. As a sophomore, not only did he lead them to repeat the title run with a 26-1 record, but he was also named to the All-USA First Team, making him the first sophomore in history to accomplish that feat. But by his junior season, the entire team had gotten cocky and unfocused, and the original coach they'd come there to play for left him to coach college, which seemed like a pretty grimy thing to do considering he told them he was going to be there all 4 years. So under Drew Joyce's dad, who they chose not to fully respect as a coach because of how cocky they'd gotten, they post their quote-unquote worst record at 23-4, ultimately losing the state title to Roger Bacon High School. But even though they'd failed as a team, LeBron was still able to become both the Gatorade Player of the Year and Parade Magazine's High School Boys Basketball Player of the Year. Despite St. Vincent's dominant 26-1 record in his senior year to go along with his monster averages of 30 points and 9 rebounds, this one wasn't without adversity either. By this time, it was pretty clear that he was going to the pros, which he'd even considered after his junior year, so the media created controversy around all the free stuff he was getting and the $50,000 Hummer he was driving despite his poor upbringing. But out of everything there was to be suspicious about, the Ohio High School Athletic Association decided to make a big deal out of him accepting 2 free jerseys from a store in Cleveland worth $845, and interpreting that as a violation of the rule where players can't accept gifts, they took away his eligibility for the rest of his senior season. On top of that, it caused the school to have to forfeit their most recent win, which accounts for the 1 loss on their record that season. Those hating ass motherfuckers. Anyways, he appealed that ruling in court, got reinstated, and led them to their 3rd state title in 4 years. So all in all, while undoubtedly being the greatest modern day high school player anyone had ever seen, James graduated with a total of 2,657 points, 892 rebounds, and 523 assists to go with countless personal awards and 3 state championships. You could have mistaken the crowds for college games, NBA players were raving about the impact he could have on the league, and he was thereby dubbed the Chosen One before he'd ever set a foot in the league. There is no way to understate the massive hype he caused at that age without social media, because even today with all the new tools we have, that level of hype still hasn't been duplicated over a high school basketball star. This is crucial to his entire case because with that hype came expectations. He was expected to go straight from high school to the pros and dominate. He was expected to one day win multiple championships. He was expected to be the next generation's Michael Jordan. Any one of those could have broken a regular kid. He could have easily snapped under the pressure. He could have easily just turned into one of the many busts whose games didn't translate into the pros. But for the next 15 years after his illustrious high school career, despite all the hate and criticism these expectations had created for him, he defended the hype, and that's what truly cements his case for the greatest of all time.
Surprising, yes, but shocking the way they won. And the way the Cavs lost 3 straight. And again, the impending free agency of LeBron James sends the impact of this collapse to another dimension.
LeBron's career is going to make a really good book one day. There's so much adversity, failure, triumph, and many different storylines that make it one of the most interesting careers to examine in history. As for the parts that build his case for GOAT, the situation he was drafted into and what he did with it is a great place to start. Being drafted by Cleveland was both a blessing and a curse for his career. It was obviously a blessing because it was technically considered home, and when he eventually won the championship, that was a huge boost for his legacy. But it was a curse because it was like starting a race a few seconds after the gunshot. So if the race is considered the greatest of all time, then the participants next to LeBron are guys like Magic, Jordan, Kareem, etc. Well, most of the participants in that race were drafted into favorable situations, if not the perfect one. Magic fit right into a slot next to Kareem. The Bulls management immediately made it their priority to build around Jordan. Kareem got to play with Oscar, but LeBron was drafted to a franchise where the success started and finished with him. Simply put, he was already branded as the Chosen One, a title that he embraced with the tattoo on his back of course, but he was about to enter a professional world that needed both management and players to ultimately be successful, which was not the case in high school. The only question now was, were both sides going to hold up their end of the bargain?
Here he comes the other way. There's your first James Jam of his career. Defense. Buckle up for LeBron James. Here's the finish with a high dribble. Yes, and the foul.
Right from the start, there was no question what LeBron would bring to Cleveland. His first year wasn't as spectacular as Magic Johnson's or Michael Jordan's, but it was still good enough to bring him Rookie of the Year in a top-heavy class featuring Carmelo Anthony, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh. Despite Melo technically having a better case for that award, LeBron was able to immediately display his all-around game, averaging 20, 6, and 5, but he clearly had a ways to go to meet expectations. Although he wouldn't see the playoffs for the first 2 years of his career, unlike a couple of his draft mates, his game almost immediately advanced enough to jolt him into the ranks with the top players in the league. In 2005, which was his sophomore year, his 27 points per game average on 47% shooting made him the 3rd leading scorer in the NBA, placing him right behind a prime Kobe and Iverson, and in front of greats in their prime such as Dirk Nowitzki, Amari Stoudemire, Tracy McGrady, and basically any elite mid-2000 scorer that you could name. And it's pretty crucial that this happened as quickly as it did, because while his rookie year was impressive, it was also inefficient. Carmelo Anthony could have beaten him for the award, and it would have been considered a disappointment if those numbers were anywhere near his peak. With those 27 points, he also threw in 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, and led the league in minutes played to propel the Cavaliers to their first winning season since 1998. Just for comparison purposes, this 20-year-old kid had nearly pumped up his scoring average to 30 points a game, all while maintaining rebound, assist, and steal averages that held par with Magic Johnson at the same age. That's when everybody should have known it was real. Still, he had to settle for All-NBA second team in 05, as many of the 2000s greats were still pumping out prior performances while leading their teams deep into the playoffs. But by the time the year 2006 came around, there was simply no more denying it. Since it was mentioned earlier that both management and players needed to contribute for success, it is worth mentioning that Cleveland was already failing to do so. In a complete debacle and failure to use common sense, they lost future All-Star Carlos Boozer even though he should have been a restricted free agent, and yes, it was 100% management's fault. If you want the full story on that, I went over it at the beginning of this year. But despite management not being able to put anything more than an average roster around LeBron, he again upped his scoring average to an insane 31 points per game while shooting 48%, and this time the Cavs won 50 games for the first time since 1993. That was the third best record in the Eastern Conference, and for most people, this is where his story truly began, the playoffs.
For the win! 0.9 left. Arenas. LeBron does it again!
There's a good deal of fans that believe nothing truly matters until the playoffs. You could have won 57 games, the MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, and whatever a player did in the season or in their career could all come crashing down in one swift motion due to failure in the playoffs. And while that would eventually become a theme in his own career, for now, he come into this postseason in a way few ever imagined that he could. LeBron's very first playoff game was a 32-point triple-double with 11 rebounds and 11 assists, as the Cavaliers manhandled a Washington team that was at least more offensively talented than they were. But that's an extremely common theme throughout his career, as you'll see, facing more talented teams, but being so individually dominant that he could nearly always at least keep his team in it. That series also included him posting 2 game winners, 2 40-point games, one of which was the most points scored by any player in his first road playoff game, and an overall series average of 35.7 points, 7.5 rebounds, and 5.7 assists on 51% shooting. Where else in modern NBA history could you find a 21-year-old with that type of performance as his playoff debut? Jordan's first series didn't look like that, but Magic Johnson's first series was pretty close considering he'd average a triple-double. Either way, that wasn't even the end of it. The second round brought him face to face with the back-to-back defending Eastern Conference champion Detroit Pistons, and given the makeup of the two teams, this could have been a quickie for Detroit. Instead, LeBron turned in yet another elite series for his age and nearly brought down one of the best teams in the NBA by getting the series to 7 games. One of the biggest criticisms of his 2007 run was that beating the Pistons wasn't as impressive without Ben Wallace, but people forget that he nearly did it with Ben Wallace just 1 year before. But despite all LeBron had to offer in that series, NBA history was robbed of a showdown between two up-and-coming legends in him and Dwayne Wade, and he was sent home to watch his peer and draft mate claim his first NBA title. So that concludes high school and the first few years of LeBron's case for GOAT, and all of it was important. You saw that he dominated high school ball in a way few ever had, generating hype pre-social media that we still haven't seen since we got social media. The hype led to wild expectations that he probably exceeded for his first 3 seasons. He put up insane numbers, steadily improved what was a terrible team, entered the playoffs outperforming even the greatest players in NBA history, and then nearly toppled a former champion that had just come within a game of repeating. Let's say, hypothetically, that LeBron suffered a career-altering injury not long after 06, something like what Derrick Rose experienced. To this day, we'd be talking about how that kid from Akron was setting the league on fire for 3 years in a way that hadn't been done since Jordan, and we'd also be saying that without that injury, he would have made a run at becoming the greatest player of all time. That's exactly what we would have said based off those 3 years and that tiny playoff sample size. We would have imagined him wielding the power to win multiple MVPs, multiple championships, and to be the best player regardless of whatever team he played on. Luckily, that injury never happened, and for the next 12 years, despite tons of adversity and criticism, even in the moments when it looked like his case to be the GOAT was all over, he would seize the opportunity to do nothing other than defend the hype.